Ahmad El Ruzzi, born 1993, Al-Wada Street. Before the war, I used to feel that Gaza was my second mother. Its ground was the warm chest I could lay on, and its sky was my dreams, without limits. The sea would wash away my worries. But today I feel it's an exile. I stopped feeling it's the city of my dreams. In the war, the main electricity pole was hit by a huge rocket. All my uncles were at home with us and the electricity went out. But there was another line working near to the house. I went to our neighbor and asked him for an extension so we could connect to the second line. Once we were connected and our house was lit, he came to take the extension back. We had a huge fight. In war, everyone thinks about themselves. During the war, a lot of people had 20 bags of flour and never had a shortage of gas, while others didn't have a piece of bread. They were asking their neighbors for bread and they wouldn't give them any. Most people locked up their things under lock and key and decided not to give anything to anyone. But others were good and helpful. Back to our topic. We didn't agree to return the connection to him, even though it was his extension that we were using. And for the first time, I realized how bad we can be. We were punished on the spot. The house next to ours was bombed and split in 2 pieces, and half of it fell on us. We left the connection and electricity and everything and ran away to my uncle's house next to the municipal park. My uncle's house is close to a government building. And in the evening, people started saying that building will be bombed. And if it was bombed, my uncle's house might disappear from existence. We sat there not knowing what to do or where to go. My dad kept reassuring us, "Don't worry, don't be scared. Nothing will happen." We stayed there till midnight. We kept hearing rockets and explosions. And my dad kept saying, "Don't worry and don't be scared." But suddenly he said, "Follow me, we're going back home." And he started shaking. All of us started shaking with him. My mum started screaming and my uncle was in really bad shape. Anyway, all of us ran away in the middle of the night with my uncle's family. We ran home. Couldn't believe it when we got home. Till today, I don't remember where we slept or how. The important thing was that we were away from that building. We found that our neighbor had taken the electricity connection, and we spent the night in darkness while his house was lit. I felt he was right to take his connection back. After that, my dad got a connection complex. He bought 3 electric cables and 6 gas bottles, 2 electric pans, 20 neon lights, 20 packs of candles, 6 packs of cans, 10 packs of wires, 6 flashlights, and 2 boxes of batteries. We're living in war, and we have to be careful till things get better. I got a complex worse than all others. It's as though I was generous before the war, or maybe I didn't know the value of things, because I couldn't believe that there would be a day when I wouldn't find a drink of water or a piece of bread. But after the war, I became super careful with everything and anything. I started barely sweetening my tea. And if I broke a loaf of bread, I wasn't allowed to finish it. I lost my appetite for food and I became really economical. My dad says, "Ahmad always has his pocket money." Of course, because I take it and save it in case there's another war. I feel like I'm married with 10 kids. I'm scared of life, of everything, of the smallest things. Always worried. I feel that all of Gaza is sitting on moving sands. Any madness you can imagine can happen in a second in this place. And a lot of dreams may come true too. It's a strange city with no logic. China is now 1/3 of the world. And they all work, but can barely make enough shoes and shirts for Gaza. Gaza consumes everything, and the world attacks it. But it keeps pretending nothing is wrong. Actually, Gaza is full of poverty, and there are people who pick their food from the garbage. The tragedy is that things keep getting worse. And the biggest tragedy is that there's nothing to stop that happening. Every pit has a bottom, except Gaza. I dream of living one day in freedom. And I don't think that's a big dream. But it's hard to come true. My dream is also to end the Palestinian division, which is giving us schizophrenia. I'm tired of thinking, but I can't stop it. We have to plea, and God will provide. And to you folks, goodbye.
Ashraf A Sossi, born 1994, Al-Wada Street. All the neighborhood kids loved him. He was calmer than a breeze. He would take his pocket money from my father and give it to me. Everyone loved him. His friends came, and he went with them to school. They went out running like butterflies, flying off the ground, like the world was created for them. The Israeli planes were in the air. The sound of the helicopter was like a monster waiting to pounce on its prey. A car of wanted men was driving along Yarmouk Street, and the butterflies were near the car. The butterflies didn't know that this car would be the fire that would burn them. A rocket fell on the car. My brother Tarek flew 5 meters off the ground. He flew higher than the car, then came down walking. Nothing was the matter with him. The ambulance came and took the corpses. People told him to get into the ambulance, but he told them, "Nothing is the matter with me," and he kept going to school. 100 meters later, he put his hand on his heart and fell down a martyr. I was in the street waiting for the school bus, and my sister told me to go and see what's going on. I did, but I didn't see Tarek, and I went on to school. While I was in class, my uncles came and told me, "You will take 3 days off school." I didn't suspect anything. We got in the car. My uncle told the driver to turn off the news. Then I started getting suspicious because my uncle loves the news. We got home, and there was a big crowd of people around. Before I went down, I saw my father sitting on the chair, crying. It was the first time I saw my father cry, and he was holding the picture of my brother Tarek. I asked him, "Dad, was my brother martyred?" He said, "God have mercy on his soul." The ambulance brought him from the hospital. We all ran to him to say goodbye. He was sleeping like an angel with the book that he's been carrying still in his hands. My father refused to let us go with him to the cemetery, but I got in the car and went and said goodbye to him and read the Fatiha prayer on his grave. I kept going for 3 months every day to sit at his grave and talk to him. At night, I stare at his picture in the room with "The Hero Martyr Tarek" written on it. Since my brother was martyred, I got used to sleeping in the bed alone. We used to sleep one on top of the other, legs on top of heads. Sometimes it felt like all our limbs were jumbled together. But today I have a bed to myself. I'll never forget my brother.
Alaa Hajjaj, born 1996. I feel like running in the street till my headscarf flies in the sky and I fly after it. Sometimes I feel like being totally crazy, but I can't. It's the first time I say things like this. Maybe they're not the kind of things I say, or maybe they are the things that I can't express or I'm scared to express. Why do my parents treat me like this? I look at the girls my age, how they are living their lives, and I envy them. I wish I could be like them in their confidence and freedom. I wish a ship could carry me to a distant island and throw me on its shore, far away from the world, from everything, especially the war. Speaking of the war, all the war was one pile and my mom was the other. I'll never understand why my mom kept describing things to me that I'd already seen. She and I were standing on the balcony. They bombed our neighbor's house and one of the neighbors died. We saw how the house was destroyed and how the corpse flew onto the street. And you can imagine what happened to the family after that. Did it end? No, it didn't. My mom started telling me about how our neighbor's house was bombed and how our neighbor flew from the house, like she was talking to someone who hadn't been standing with her. And on it went, stories from mom all through the war, and I was the only listener. We'd been sitting watching TV, and they would say there was bombing or destruction in some place. The report would be 15 minutes long, but mom's repeated report would be 2 hours. She'd talk about the report like I hadn't been with her. I started to doubt myself. Had I been sitting with her or not? I swear I was there. I was really there. I was sitting next to her. Anyway, thankfully, Mom isn't with you. Otherwise, she'd give you a headache with her stories.
Gaza is a plane carrying people and traveling towards the unknown, landing neither in heaven nor in hell. No one knows when it will land, and people may stay suspended like that for twice my lifetime. All days here are the same. There is nothing new. The simplest thing is that dreams and wishes are hard to make true in Gaza, especially if they're like mine. To be an artist, singing and acting and playing music. In Gaza, the only music is that of death and dancing on wounds. If I go abroad and study directing, how would society look at me? After I graduate, will the country be like now or worse? Everything for me is foggy and unclear, like people's faces on Friday at the Farrers Market, and like the day the war began. The first hit was at the Ministry of Passports. My friend and I came out of an exam. It was the first day of the first term exams. We sat in front of the school gate, talking and waiting for the rest of our friends so we'd go home together. Suddenly, there was a series of explosions. I was in shock and felt that I was going to die. We ran away and I was really scared. I saw the women running and screaming and beating their faces, and I had no idea what was going on. I felt I couldn't stand on my legs, and the world started spinning. I fainted and stopped feeling anything. Then I woke up to my friend's voice shouting, "Amanee, for God's sake, wake up!" When I woke up, I started crying, not knowing where to go or what to do. An older girl helped me and took me home. As soon as I arrived, my mother took me in her arms. I was very tired, but at that moment, I rested. I needed to fall into someone's arms. The hardest thing to feel is that your moment of death is near. The war was like a black ghost that covered Gaza's day and night. It imposed its hell on people, on the earth and sky, and the air that we breathe. After the war, I had a breakdown. A big wild wave overtook my soul. I was thinking I wouldn't be able to come out from under it. But it was like a hand was extended to me through the theatre. A rubber ring that pulled me out from under the wave. Today I felt a comfort that I haven't felt in a long time. And I hope I can always stay like that.
Rawand Ja'rour, born 1997, El Diraj. Relax, girls. Don't be scared. This is just the sound of aimless shooting. That's what our teacher said as soon as the bombing started. After a while, her mobile phone rang and she spoke a few words only. 120 martyrs. She smashed her mobile onto the floor and told us, "Go home, all of you." As soon as we went out into the yard, we saw our parents, some of them in pajamas, some in their undershirts and some barefoot. We were very scared. My two sisters and I kept waiting for Dad, but he was really late. So we decided to go home by ourselves, even though it's a long way. On the way, I saw something for the very first time. A martyr being carried on a coffin wrapped in the flag of Palestine, with banners around him and people crying. But the weird thing is that the funeral barely had 30 people in it. Funerals of martyrs usually have thousands. Then I felt that there was really some big catastrophe going on in the country. I got scared for Dad. I didn't want him to come get us because I was scared he'd be hit by a rocket. I was also scared of dying, and I didn't want to die now because it would be a catastrophe if I died and no one came to my funeral. I started running home, and people were running around us like it was doomsday. No one knew where they were going because the sound of rockets didn't stop. Every few seconds, a rocket would fall and shake the ground. I felt that the streets were not the same streets, nor the people the same people. Strange sights, sounds, and smells. After the war, a lot of things changed inside me. I started hating going to the bathroom. From the second I go in, I can't wait to come running out. Because all the time in the war, I was afraid to hit a rocket on a house when I'm in the bathroom. In there, one would be in great focus and, you know, the rest. I also started hating the morning line at school. When the war started, I was in the line. And that's why today I feel that the minutes in the line are hours of fear and worry. All school for me is one pile and the line is another. I started having terrifying dreams. All night, I have a conflict within myself, between desire to sleep and fear of nightmares. Sleep became a monster hiding behind my eyelids. I stay like that till morning. I don't know when I slept and when I woke up. I want to become an actress. And this is a hard dream to fulfill in Gaza, especially for girls. I tell myself it's a shame for people in Gaza to be deprived of my talent, because I could become an important actress. But if they don't want me, to hell with them. I'll go to any country and act there. Gazans are deprived of everything anyway. It doesn't stop at theatre. Sometimes I think people in Gaza can barely find food. How are they going to go to the theatre? You know, I wish I could live in a civil democratic society with peace and 20 cinemas and keep watching movies and flying in my imagination and dreaming.
When I was young, I used to feel that I was the happiest child in the world. But the more I grow and my mind grows, the more my worry grows. Because I start to understand things that I did not. I started to know the meaning of a deprived child. The thing that upsets me and makes me cry the most are children's tears. All children in the world, regardless of their nationality, religion, and color. When I grow up, I want to be a pediatrician. And that's the hope that gives me a big push in life. Even though I'm fed up, bored, and sad because Gaza doesn't have life anymore. Yesterday, I was sitting in school and I heard the sound of planes. I got really scared. I wanted to run away from school. I felt I was going to die because I remembered the war. The scenes of war won't leave my mind. On the third day of the war, my family was sitting together, talking about what was happening in the war, and my grandmother was reassuring us so we wouldn't be scared. We were actually calmed, even though the sound of rockets didn't stop. But my grandmother's warm voice was calming us. The phone rang. The lines never caught in the war, so when we heard the sound of the phones, we were happy. Hello? Yes? This is the Israeli Defense Army. You have 5 minutes to clear the house. It's for your own benefit. We have warned you. I couldn't stand on my legs anymore. Everyone in the house started yelling. My grandmother was the first one to run away. It was the first time I'd seen her going so fast. My dad held me and my sisters and told us not to be scared. He was pulling me to leave, but I was going to die if I didn't take my teddy bear with me. I felt that I would betray him if I left him under the bombing. I escaped from Dad's hands and ran to my bear, took him in my arms, and left. We all got far away from the house and sat down to wait for the 5 minutes. They were the longest 5 minutes in history. They became 10. We felt like there were years that passed. I was in a whirlwind. Thoughts and dreams were thrashing about in my head and the world was spinning. I felt that the dream of being a doctor was very, very far away. I held the bear and remembered myself when I was small, how I was always laughing. I want to go back to being small and stay small. I don't want to grow up. But the only thing that comforted me was the love of people who didn't leave us for one moment. Gaza is full of love. Reem Afana, born in 1996, Al Saftawi Street.
Translated from Arabic by Fida Jiryis. Written by Suha Al Mamlouk, born 1995, at Tuva. Every day Gaza changes. That's why my dreams always change. And each time I make a step forward, I go 100 back. In the first hit of the war, I was going home from school and didn't know the road. Suddenly, a man stood in front of me and asked me, "Where's your house?" I told him and he took me home. I went down to the house quickly and asked my dad, "Why didn't you come get me?" My mom said, "It's normal, dear. Go study." I told her there are no exams. The war started. In the afternoon, they hit the government building near us. My mom said it's normal. We are used to what is happening to us. We went running to the neighbors, each one looking out for himself. After minutes, the neighbors' relatives started coming and the house became packed with more than 100 people in it. But still, things stayed normal for my mother. In the morning, Dad went to buy bread and stood in line for 6 hours, coming home with 1 pack of bread. Each of us got half a loaf. And still my mom said it's normal. In the evening, my parents decided to go to the hospital and visit the injured, and I went with them. In the hospital, we saw many corpses. There were 4 on each bed, under and on top of each other. Only then my mother said, "This is not normal." The war isn't over. The war is big, and my fear is to grow up with it. I'm always scared of a new war. If a balloon bursts, I'm scared. If a car hits a strong brick, I jump 20 meters. And if a small kid yells, I start yelling with him. I stay up all night waiting for a new dawn. But each morning that comes does not differ from the one that passed.
The thing I love most in Gaza is that it's not like the other countries. Other countries have lots of problems: famine, siege, division, occupation, bombing, destruction and death. But we have none of these issues. That's why I love Gaza a lot, especially that the sewage and the streets are clean and people love one another. Prices are cheap, everyone is happy, and the fish are healthy and do not swim in sewage. And that I definitely will not die of hunger, poverty, or a heart attack that half my relatives died from, because of so much happiness. I want to tell you a big secret that I'm holding in my chest and hesitate to say since I started speaking. And the secret is, I, my dear folks, am the reason for the war on Gaza. You might be surprised as to why. Because I never had the dream that didn't come true. One night before the war, I dreamed that the war started and our house was bombed, and I was the only survivor. The next day at 11:25, the airstrike began on Gaza. The first shock I got in the war was when the strongest teacher in school, the math teacher, hid under his desk in fear from the first second. I thought, if the strongest teacher hides under the desk, what do we do? A lot of kids peed themselves. I started screaming and everyone started screaming with me. I was screaming for our house that I was sure was destroyed and for my family that I was sure was martyred. So I went out running in the street, wanting to rush home to my family. But I waited for 2 hours for a car to take me, and in the end I went home walking. All the way I was imagining our house destroyed and my family dead. I got home and found nothing was the matter, and my family were taking down the windows so they wouldn't break from the air pressure. But till today, I'm scared they will bomb our house. That's why, and you can ask my mom, I sleep with 3 mattresses under me, so that when there's bombing, the mattress will absorb the hits and nothing will happen to me. I hate dreaming, but dreams are not in our control. I think that Ellie, that's me, before the war is different from Ellie after the war, who is a new person that I'm trying to discover. Before the war, I didn't understand anything about politics. I didn't know the head of state from the prime minister. I never listened to news, but today I became a political analyst. Al Jazeera this morning, midday, this evening, half is of the day, half is of the week. I started following all these programs and discussing them. I started feeling that politics and news are very important in our life because they are what kills us and what gives us life. And also because I want to be the first to know if there's going to be another war.
當我同一啲喺歐洲嘅巴勒斯坦小朋友傾偈嘅時候，我好戥佢哋難過，我唔想好似佢哋咁，因為佢哋係離散嘅族群，佢哋將夢想種咗喺一笪唔屬於佢哋嘅土地。夢想應該係同人民同埋國家一齊成長嘅。我熱愛生命，我鍾意玩，鍾意同人相處。我好想做一日巴勒斯坦嘅總統，咁我就可以令到人同人之間充滿愛與和平啦，結束佢哋心底嘅仇恨同埋惡意，同埋結束內部分裂。呢個會係我第一項嘅總統施政。不過可惜嘅係，我並唔係總統，所以先至會有呢一場戰爭。啱啱開始打仗嘅時候，嗰啲炮彈好似落雨咁落落嚟，我哋好驚咁喺學校走出嚟，然後發現全個世界都喺條街度跑，啲人喺度揾佢哋嘅仔、佢哋嘅姊妹同媽咪，每個人都昂高個頭望住個天，係咁跑，係咁跑。我離遠咁見到有個人，佢着住睡衣，赤住腳係咁跑。我第一眼都認唔得出嘅，但當我慢慢行埋啲嘅時候，我就發現，哇，原來係我嬸嬸啊！嗰個好姿整嘅嬸嬸，佢每一日咧唔執到正一正都唔行出條街嘅。嗰一下我就知道戰爭真係開始咗啦。我哋談論戰爭已經有超過1年嘅時間，我哋經歷過，甚至依家每一日都巨細無遺咁經歷緊，因為電視、電話同埋門鐘都提醒住我戰爭嘅存在。我唔鍾意佢哋啊！你知唔知啊？我甚至連自己部手提電話都抌咗啦。我最驚係自己一個人嘅時候，我諗如果戰爭開始嘅時候得我一個，咁邊個嚟保護我啊？而當我同我自己屋企人一齊嘅時候，我又會諗，我可以點樣保護佢哋呢？我有一個好偉大嘅夢想，就係成為一個演員。不過呢個夢想開始慢慢都縮細，因為我哋嘅國家對於女演員嘅睇法唔係好正面。即使表演仍然係好重要，而且可以喺世界上展現我哋國家嘅苦難同埋社會面貌。咁如果第一個夢唔能夠實現嘅話，我都有第二個夢嘅，就係成為一個記者。第三個夢想呢，就係建立一個我愛同埋愛我嘅屋企。第四個夢想係我哋可以自由，巴勒斯坦嘅旗幟可以自由咁樣飄揚。第五個夢想呢，就係可以見到人人都開心啦，冇死亡、毀滅、困苦或者戰爭。第六個同埋最後一個夢想，就係我可以講完呢一段獨白，行返落個台。
Gaza's fish ran away, but people were not able to. They opened the sewage into the sea.
And if the sea could talk, it would tell them, "Shame on you for what you are doing to Gaza and me." Instead of music and acting schools, Gaza became a school for shooting and murder. I'm very scared by nature. I'm scared of cockroaches and birds. And I worry every day and night. The first day of the war, all the girls went home except me. I was the last one to leave school. I was sitting there, shaking, couldn't stand on my legs. Finally, I felt that if I don't help myself, no one would. I gathered my courage and stood up, shaking, and walked like a tree in the wind, trembling, all of me trembling. People walking near me, but no one felt me. The sounds of rockets got louder, and the horror in my heart grew deeper. Usually the distance from the school to my house is half an hour, but that day I got home in 15 minutes because of my fear. It was the time I was the most scared in my life. Every second I thought I would die. It was the first time I felt this terrible loneliness, even though the streets were full of people. I got home and stood at the window. A rocket fell near our house and I flew off the ground and landed on my back. For the whole year, the whole war, I couldn't stand at the windows. I started sleeping in the inner room. It doesn't have a single window. I think I'm still scared till today. But I pretend not to be.
Monologue 20, Mohammed El Omrani, born 1995. Gaza, the warm arms and the fire of hell. Horror, fear, death and destruction. But this time, our area was safe. Every time the occupation attacks, they hit us first. But it looks like this time they got bored of our area and wanted to make some change. So we got lucky. I used to spend the whole day sitting on a chair, watching people running away from their houses towards the borders, carrying their belongings, sons and daughters, and going west. Some of them were carrying their kids on their shoulders, their mothers on their backs. Where they were going, you don't know, till all of Gaza got squeezed into one area. Then the distance became tighter, and they started running away from the mosque. And it got tighter and tighter till they got to our house. I said to my father, "What? Is this our turn now? But where are we going to go?" My father insists that we stay at home and said, "A person who leaves his house loses his dignity." I said to myself, "Kid, stay put. You're not better than others. And whatever happens, happens." All day I would busy myself with food, and sometime we would go fill water with my cousin from the pipes in the street. It was about 1,000 meters away from the house. We used to take the donkey cart of Sabri. Him and his brother used to come with us to help. All the way he would tell us about his heroic acts and his horse, and how he would go to the wilderness and hunt birds with the slingshot. I never carried a slingshot. It's scary. But the stories were nice, and in those days, entertaining despite our fear. We used to talk so as to lessen our fear from being in the streets. When the daytime was over, The night came, and we would say, "The night has come with its worries." We couldn't even sleep. I used to sleep for 15 minutes and wake up for 3 hours. How can you sleep with the bombing going on? And we are lying in bed waiting for our fate. Sometimes I'll look at the sky from the edge of the window and find the world so red with fire and smoke everywhere. And I'd ask myself, why is the whole world at rest and we're living an inferno?
My grandmother and I were home alone. She was telling me stories about the day of our country, funny stories and sad ones, but she never told me a complete story because she always had to go to the bathroom halfway through. My grandmother spends half her time in the room and the other half in the bathroom. My parents came back at 10:30 at night and went to sleep straight away. I couldn't sleep. I was lying on my bed awake, writing my homework. Suddenly I heard the noise of a distant explosion. I went to my parents' room and took the radio to hear the news. I woke my father up and told him. I heard the sound of a strong explosion. He said, "Be quiet and go to bed. It's just aimless shooting." Anyway, I went back to bed and the electricity was out. Suddenly there was a huge explosion that shook my world. I pulled my blanket and I covered my face and something fell on me. I raised the blanket off me with all my strength, and it was the frame of the window that had fallen on me. The blanket was full of glass, and our entire house was full of black smoke. It was the day they hit the workers' union, right next to our house. But that's not the point. The point is the stupid things that happened and which I can't find an explanation for. First, the world was on fire, and we all thought we would die, but my grandmother was looking for her false teeth. She was afraid that when she died, people would find out she had no teeth, like they didn't know already. Second, the house was full of smoke, but my father lit a cigarette and smoked, as if we needed more smoke. Third, my uncle called me to make sure we were okay, and my father told him that we're all fine, thank God, but that all the windows of the house were broken except for one. My uncle told him to break it, and my father did. And I don't know why I'm telling the story. All I know is that we're living in a cage, a prison, like an encaged bird who wants to come out but he's besieged. Kids are dying in front of their mother's eyes. Hearts are crying for them and screaming in the loudest voice, but no one hears. No one's heart softens, and no one seems to care.
Monologue number 23, Mahmud Bala'wi, born 1995, Ash Shati Camp. I want to write the most beautiful words about Gaza, but I can't. I can't not see the poverty, siege, and famine, especially when all Gaza City flooded into Al Arish and emptied it from all goods in 2 hours. I can't not see the deprivation in every house, the fear and the sickness. What do you want me to say about Gaza? From when I became aware of it, I was sad about everything inside it, especially the kids and even the adults, youth, women, girls, animals, stones, and trees. Everything in it is crying. I'm looking for nice words to say, and I can't find them. The sea is the only thing that helps me dream. When I stand on the shore, I can imagine Cyprus, travel to Paris, fly to Rome, all while standing in the same spot. I go around the whole world, and in the end, I land on my bed in our house, in the middle of the refugee camp. I go back to the reality of Gaza, the dirty market, overflowing sewage, the carts, and what's on top of the carts, the suffocating smell, and the silent people who can't speak. When I look at the clock, it's 11:55. I start shaking and my heart beats faster. I feel that the war started again. Not only the clock scares me, everything that fly does, even the flies. I can't tell anyone about my fear, so they don't call me a wimp or a sissy. I'm most scared for my older brothers. When a fly lands on any of them, I feel it's going to kill him. I start shouting and I run away from the place. That's why I'm now escaping outside the house all the time, because many of the flies.
Kalau kau nak panggil aku pengecut, silakan. Sejak peperangan yang berlaku, aku tak lawan balik siapa-siapa yang maki hamun atau nak pukul aku. Aku hanya beredar dari situ, sedih. Sebelum peperangan, aku tak macam ni. Burung yang berterbangan pun akan menjauhi aku. Kenapa aku jadi macam ni?
Because honestly, after I saw so many kids dying in the war, I started to feel that all of us are going to die. It's just a bit delayed. I said to myself, kid, you're a lot bigger than that. I started to feel that I was 100 years old. The war ended on the ground, but it's still there in my head.
Perang dah pun berakhir. Tapi perang tu masih kekal dalam benak aku.
I want to be like any child in this world. Not in the world, at least in Jerusalem. When I chat to my cousins who are living in Jerusalem on the net, I feel that they are living their childhood and they don't think like me at all.
Aku takut nak bagi tahu mereka apa yang aku fikirkan. Supaya mereka tak akan anggap aku ni pelik. Aku akan pura-pura dengar dan berbohong pada mereka. Mereka tak lalui apa yang kita hadapi pada waktu perang.
They didn't live what we lived in the war.
Keluarga aku dan keluarga pakcik aku dan datuk aku, kita semua pergi tinggal di rumah pakcik Ananku. Sebab ia jauh dari kawasan perang dan selamat. Itu sangkaan kami.
The next day, there was bombing on the street next to my uncle's house and the wall behind the house collapsed.
Pada hari ketiga, Pakcik Anan yang rumahnya kita diami keluar membeli sarapan, ful dan falafel. Sepulangnya dia meletakkan keretanya di depan pintu rumah. Belum sempat dia turun dari kereta, sebuah roket jatuh di atasnya.
And before he went down from the car, a rocket fell on him. The upper half of his body fell on the asphalt. And when the ambulance came, they took out the lower half from the car. The paramedics went and collected the upper half in a plastic bag, and they took him to the hospital.
Orang semua mula meraung dan memekik. Dan ibuku mula merayu kepada Tuhan agar Pakcik Anan dipulangkan dengan selamat.
Everyone started wailing and screaming. And my mother started asking God to bring him back safe. I don't know, was she lying to herself or to us? Of course, my uncle didn't come back. And he won't come back safe.
Gaza條街第一次咁乾淨，連一張紙、一塊紙皮都冇。因為斷電，啲人執喺街上揾到嘅紙去煮嘢食。媽媽唔想煮，叫我去麵包鋪拎啲麵包返嚟。麵包鋪排晒長龍，由加沙排到去西岸，排隊要排成8個鐘，但係都只係排到半包麵包。喺好短嘅時間裏邊，啲人就喺附近起咗一個巴勒斯坦嘅火箭發射器。唔夠1秒鐘，以色列嘅飛機就開始轟炸，啲人四周圍躲避，好多救護車趕過嚟。有人喺一瞬間就失去生命，有人重傷。當時我好驚，街上面有唔同嘅人走過嚟同我講 Thank God， 好彩你冇事。最後返到屋企，我半嚿麵包都冇。媽媽鬧咗一餐，去到依家佢都唔知點解我冇帶麵包返屋企。
Our future in Gaza is obscure and unknown, like a calm volcano that can erupt at any second, as if we're on a boat without a captain in the midst of a raging sea. We go right and we go left, and no one knows where to lean. I hear that in other countries, childhood is sacred, and children live their lives without problems and fear. But Gaza's children are forgotten and outside the picture. They're the ones who feel the injustice the most because society treats them like they're not kids. When it wants, it makes them adults, and when it wants, it returns them to being children. And most people deal with them like they're only bodies, not minds. When I see a child peddling in the street or working in a shop, I imagine how the children of the world are playing, resting, and feeling safe. Honestly, my heart breaks for them, and sometimes I cry. Gaza has no tenderness nor childhood. A boy is born a man here, and the girl is born a bride. Dad, before the war, was not more tender with me. I wish he could take me in his arms like before. But God help him, he's probably worried too. Because in the war, we lost 5 dunams of land in a second. The field that's 60 years old was hit by a rocket from the Israeli army, which burned all the oranges in it. My father, my brother, and myself could have also died because of that rocket, because we were so close to the window. If Dad hadn't thrown me on the ground, all the shrapnel would have hit me. After the war, I visited Rafah crossing, and I saw the flags of Palestine and Egypt next to each other, yet separated by a wire. I felt the difference between the 2 flags, and that this wire is the border of this big prison that we live in. I felt how stupid and unjust is the world. And I felt like breaking all borders and ending all differences between races and religions, so that everyone in the world would be brothers. My dream became to live in a safe country, even in a small village, in a distant island at the end of the world.
The Gaza Mono-Logues, 30. Yasmeen Abu Amer, born 1996, Al-Shujaiyeh. I want to be a specialist in the science of metaphysics, what is behind nature. You know why? Because I think Gaza itself is behind nature, and I got so much from my presence here in Gaza that I would like to transfer my skill to others. The Shujaiyeh camp is always the center of events. Each time the occupation wants to invade Gaza, they pass by our house. When the war began, people left their houses thinking that the Shujaiyeh would be hit. It's normal in this case to leave the house. Everyone was calling my dad to convince him to leave the house. My brothers from Algeria, my uncles from the States, my uncles from Ankara. The whole world was begging my dad, and he wouldn't budge, refusing to leave the Shujaiyeh. 3 days with my mom, having packed the house stuff, we're in suspended travel mode. We want to go to my sister's house because it's safer there. After we were exhausted from talking, he agreed and said, "You go, and I'll follow." How can we go and leave him? My mum was smart. She left the bread at home, and you know how dear bread was in the war. As soon as we got to my sister's house, she called him and said, "Salman, we forgot the bread. Bring it to us." And Salman fell in the trap and brought the bread, and we wouldn't let him leave. The next morning, we woke up to a phosphorus bomb that fumed the streets. We all started crying, our tear falling because of the phosphorus. The bomb was easier on us than the dad's taunting. He said, "I told you, let's stay home, it's better for us, there's no place like home." And on it went. What added fuel to the fire is the mosque and house next to my sister's house were destroyed in the bombing. And you can imagine what my dad did to us. He wanted to take us back home immediately. No sooner had he finished his work that we were told that the house next to ours in Ja'rour was bombed and the front of our house ripped off. We stayed at my sister's place. It became clear to us wherever we were in Gaza, in the war, we were not safe. After the war, I started to dress in a very clean and tidy way, so that if I die, I would die a nice death. And it would be the biggest problem if I were to hit by a rocket because I would become 100 pieces. And I would like to die in one piece. Well, Gaza and Gaza's dream. Our dream has become to die a good death, not live a good life.